Good morning. It's great to be with you again to take a closer look at the November elections a little over a month ago, and some thoughts about how we got here and what paths we may take in the coming year. As you can see, I've rolled up my sleeves because we have work to do. Also, I would like to wish you all a happy International Human Rights Day. Maybe you saw in your calendars that December 10th is that celebration. And in the early 2000s, there was a proclamation that enlarged the celebration to a week. But looking back at this past year, I think we're going to need at least a month in the coming year. When you've had me, given me the privilege to meet with you on other occasions, it's usually been around Labor Day. And you have asked me to talk about labor issues, economic challenges to American working families, employment law developments. And I always emphasize the first two principles of Unitarian Universalism. And of course, these principles are also shared by many religions and philosophical traditions. The first principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Again, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. And the second principle is justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. Once again, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. So with these principles as a background, the question is how to understand and evaluate, really interpret the election results. Certainly it is not an issue of good people versus bad people, at least in my opinion. When I'm considering an issue or a candidate, first I look at facts. And then I think about my own values and principles. And then I try to determine which facts are believable, or if one side or the other is exaggerating or simply being dishonest. And then I reach a decision about my stand on the issue or candidate. Now, many commentators, historians, election experts, psychologists have noted the unprecedented high level of disinformation that generally was either uncritically echoed or not aggressively challenged by the commercial media. And many other factors obviously were also involved. Fortunately, there are some alternative sources of information, but it takes some effort to sort out what is reliable and documented and what is not. One alternative source of information, surprisingly, I have found is YouTube. It takes little time researching your topic, your speaker, but there are many prominent writers, historians, economists, labor union leaders, psychiatrists, and just ordinary people who have podcasts, documentaries, and videos that give truly alternative viewpoints we almost never hear in the commercial media. It seems to me not enough people used this valuable source of information in the year before the election. Regardless, the election should not be considered a landslide. Percentages were 49.8% to 48.2%. This was a razor's edge difference, not a mandate. The winner received a plurality of the votes, more than the other candidate, but not a majority of all of the votes cast. And maybe we should pay attention to the words of Groucho Marx, You remember Groucho Marx. Groucho is credited with asking the very important question, are you going to believe me, or are you going to believe your own eyes? Groucho seems to be cautioning us not to just accept uncritically whatever someone says, regardless of who it is. Now, I'm happy to say there have been some good developments, some good news to report. One, the captive audience workplace meetings required by many employers have been outlawed this past month by Alaska and California, and previously by 7 other states. And last month, the National Labor Relations Board in Washington, D.C. issued a regulation outlawing these captive audience meetings with employees. You may know, they are in many workplaces required to attend meetings with a representative of the employer who gives anti-union speeches during election campaigns, union election campaigns. So this obviously was felt to be unfair. Now we have a national regulation from the National Labor Relations Board outlawing that across the country. And that is definitely a move forward. Also, this year's Gallup poll, again, finds that 70% of Americans approve of labor unions as a means of improving wages and working conditions. Third, unions and their supporters are still fighting for the PRO Act, which stands for Protecting the Right to Organize. And the idea of this legislation is to prohibit some unfair tactics employers use to gain an advantage in union elections. The PRO Act is merely asking for a long overdue leveling of the playing field in union elections. The new administration has promised to veto the PRO Act if both houses of Congress pass it. The House of Representatives has already passed it. The new administration also opposes any increase in the minimum wage. Unfortunately, this new coming administration appears to be planning obstructions to this kind of progress in their blueprint known as Project 2025. It's a 920-page blueprint explaining how the new administration intends to dismantle federal civil rights protections, including union organizing rights. They would become optional with the states. If states wanted to try to come up with some kind of a plan to replace the federal legislation, the National Labor Relations Act of 1935, fine. It's all going to be optional. It's worked for 90 years, but this is what we may have coming with the new administration. Also, a new tax structure that would harm middle and low income families in favor of the super rich. Other policies would include an increase in military spending and the buildup of nuclear weapons, likely to continue the entanglement in ever more undeclared wars, unpopular with Americans and devastating in the unnecessary deaths and destruction they cause. So the fundamental issue, according to many observers, is whether the country, including the Democratic Party leaders, in the next 2 years will aggressively organize, advocate, and vote consistent with a working class agenda, or whether a large number of people will maintain their preference for an administration that many are convinced will not follow through on a true, not a counterfeit populist agenda. I would like to conclude by sharing with you what may be the most significant speech of our time. This 3.5-minute speech is from a 1940 film produced and starring one of the world's most popular entertainers of his era. And this is his most popular film, The Great Dictator by Charles Chaplin. In 1972, when the Academy Awards gave Chaplin a Lifetime Special Award, a Special Achievement Award for his work, he received a 12-minute standing ovation, the longest standing ovation received by any honoree of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. I think you will agree that Chaplin passionately explains human nature, humanitarianism, and democratic values that are desperately needed in the world today. The film is a parody about a fictitious dictator in a fictitious country called Romania after World War I. The dictator is on a mission to dominate the world. He attempts to rid his country of its Jews, people of color, labor unions, and anyone who disagrees with him. Chaplin's character is a gentle little Jewish barber in the small village of Romania, in a small village in that country, and his physical appearance strikingly resembles the dictator, who is accidentally arrested thinking that he was the barber. Then the dictator's generals, thinking the barber is the dictator, escorts the barber to the stage in front of thousands of cheering soldiers in a huge outdoor arena. The barber, who was forced to wear the dictator's uniform, is unable to physically resist, and he approaches the podium to deliver an unforgettable speech we are about to hear. I think we have it.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful, but we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and little children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass and dictators die, and the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes, men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery. Fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power. The power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!
It's certainly very powerful. I think what Chaplain is saying is that without a strong democracy, it is unlikely that working families will have a decent standard of living, or that anyone will have a healthy, enjoyable, and dignified life at peace with our neighbors and the world. Thank you for inviting me again. I want to wish you all a happy holiday season and peace on earth, hopefully before the New Year's. Thank you again. Bye-bye.